Blake Lively is in the midst of a complete meltdown after Megyn Kelly tore through her carefully polished image.
So she's a serial fraudster. That's called fraud. She admitted to trying to poison the cast of Gossip Girl, which is where she made her name, against her co-star Penn Badgley, who played her love interest,
exposing a messy past that nobody thought possible.
Today, we see some evidence now that Blake Lively may have a history. They released the cut of the movie. He didn't even get to see it. He was the director of the film, the producer of the film, the guy who got the rights to the film, the one who's supposed to be in control. He didn't even get to see it. He was in the basement at his own movie premiere. And then she had the nerve, because she had 2 minutes of bad publicity when the film hit, to come out and try to blame it all on him.
For years, Blake strolled through Hollywood as if she owned the place, smiling for the cameras, dazzling on every red carpet, and acting like she was the ultimate industry darling. Yet away from the flashes and the glossy magazine covers, her story takes a much darker turn. People who worked with her claim she bulldozed coworkers' careers, humiliated colleagues during live interviews, and demanded absolute authority on set.
She is accused of having turned the whole cast of It Ends With Us against Justin. By the time they premiered the movie, Ryan Reynolds had unfollowed him on Insta, so had Blake, so had the rest of the cast.
Now, thanks to Megyn Kelly's scathing exposé, it all seems to be unraveling in the most spectacular way. Blake spent years convincing the world she was the embodiment of grace and beauty, an effortless blend of glamour and relatability. Every elegant dress, every poised interview, every perfectly curated social media post, it all contributed to the illusion of someone who could do no wrong. But Megyn Kelly's commentary smashed that image to pieces. Suddenly, there were new and old accusations surfacing, including claims that Blake hijacked the highly anticipated movie adaptation of It Ends With Us and manipulated its director.
They released the cut of the movie. He didn't even get to see it. He was the director of the film, the producer of the film, the guy who got the rights to the film, the one who's supposed to be in control. He didn't even get to see it. He was in the basement at his own movie premiere. And then she had the nerve, because she had 2 minutes of bad publicity when the film hit, to come out and try to blame it all on him.
Justin Baldoni, to such an extent that he was allegedly banished to a basement during the film's own premiere. All of this points to a bigger pattern, not just a one-off feud or misunderstanding. And now that Megyn has brought these stories into the spotlight, the empire Blake built on secrecy and control appears to be crumbling. Rumors swirled that she and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, orchestrated a campaign against Baldoni, a campaign so intense that by the time the movie premiered, the two men were no longer speaking. But the seeds of Blake's reputation as a behind-the-scenes power player were planted years earlier, back in her Gossip Girl days. In interviews, she admitted she didn't just avoid Penn Badgley, who played Dan Humphrey, she actually poisoned the rest of the cast against him simply because she didn't like him. You'd think that level of confession would shock everyone into reevaluating her sweet image, but it didn't. She continued to charm the public at press events, star in bigger and bigger projects, and marry Ryan Reynolds, cementing her place in the tabloid pantheon as one half of a beloved power couple. What people didn't see was how, behind that public image, Blake was perfecting what some would call a takeover strategy. Get cast in a role, appear enthusiastic and unassuming, then slowly reshape the entire project to fit her vision. This is exactly what Justin Baldoni's lawsuit seems to be suggesting she did with
actor-director Justin Baldoni is now suing his former co-star Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds, seeking more than $400 million in damages, accusing them of defamation and extortion.
It Ends With Us. He secured the film rights and directed the adaptation, only to find himself shut out of major creative decisions once Blake came on board. It's not just industry gossip either. Blake actually spoke about her approach in a 2022 speech at a women's summit. She joked about telling directors whatever they wanted to hear until she landed the part, and then gradually taking the reins. It was meant to be lighthearted, but today it sounds like a public confession of exactly what Baldoni accuses her of doing. As more details come out, it becomes clear this Blake method didn't begin with "It Ends With Us," even on gossip. Girl, she was rumored to have staked her claim early, making sure she was always the show's focal point, right down to her relationships with cast members. She and Penn Badgley started off on the wrong foot. Rather than simply ignoring him, she bragged about poisoning others against him so they'd ice him out. Fans initially dismissed it as normal behind-the-scenes tension, but an interview she gave around 2009 reads more like a confession of a high school mean girl approach, except she was applying it in a professional environment with a global audience. When asked if the tension between her and Penn was merely a tabloid rumor, she casually admitted that she was so upset when he was cast that she turned the rest of the ensemble against him, at least until he proved he wasn't a jerk. It sounds personal, borderline cruel, and definitely not fitting the sweet persona she put forward in public. You might assume she'd grown out of that behavior, but evidence suggests otherwise. Do you believe her? Let me know your thoughts below. Fast forward to Blake's film career, which shot up in the 2010s. She became known not just for her acting, but for her fashion sense and her marriage to Ryan Reynolds. The two cultivated an image of playful banter online, couple goals at red carpet events, and a breezy sense of humor. In the eyes of many fans, they were unproblematic and refreshing. Her interviews on late-night shows were always crowd-pleasers. She seemed witty and approachable. Meanwhile, she was quietly picking up more and more creative control on the projects she took. Or, so the rumors say. Everything seemed to be going great until the Megyn Kelly takedown. Kelly's thorough on-air breakdown of Blake's alleged manipulations, pulled receipts from interviews, stories from castmates, and behind-the-scenes accounts that all painted a much darker portrait.
I will happily participate in releasing any further leaks that they have, because the truth should be out.
Kelly pointed to a consistent theme. Whenever Blake felt her authority was challenged, she worked the system behind closed doors. If that didn't succeed, she'd publicly flip the script and claim to be the victim of someone else's wrongdoing. Now, whether Kelly is absolutely right about all these points or not, the conversation she started has forced a massive spotlight onto Blake's behind-the-scenes behavior. One of the biggest bombshells involves Justin Baldoni's experiences. During It Ends With Us. According to reports, Baldoni had been passionate about adapting this Colleen Hoover novel for years. He acquired the rights, had a specific creative vision, and was set to direct and produce. Enter Blake Lively, who was cast as the lead, a move that thrilled the fanbase at first. But almost immediately, rumors surfaced that she began demanding script rewrites and making on-set changes that had not been approved by Baldoni. Some say she brought in her own editors, reworked entire plot points, and basically turned Baldoni into a figurehead on what should have been his own film. By the time the movie premiered, the story goes that Baldoni wasn't allowed to stand on the main floor. Instead, he was reportedly relegated to the basement, a humiliation so severe that it still shocks Hollywood insiders.
And by the time they premiered the movie, they weren't even speaking to each other. She made him stay in the basement, and Ryan Reynolds turned on him too. And then she claimed that he unleashed a bad PR campaign against her, and he claims none of that is true. There was absolutely no harassment. Those are made-up claims. She wrested his movie away from him and decided to try to hurt him with petty, made-up, out-of-context complaints when he pushed back even in the mildest way, and that she and her husband are bullies.
A lot of people questioned why no one in Hollywood said anything earlier. Part of the answer might be the star power that Blake and Ryan hold. They're a couple that can command massive attention and media coverage. They have deep connections with influential figures, including top studios and big-name producers. Baldoni, while respected, doesn't have the same level of A-list clout. After all, he's not a Spielberg or a Nolan, someone who can do whatever they want without repercussions. And so, the narrative that reached the public was largely in Blake's favor until Megyn Kelly dug deeper, when footage from 2016 leaked, showing Blake mocking a journalist named Kirsty about supposedly having a baby bump. It highlighted her alleged mean streak. Kirsty later said she wasn't pregnant, and in fact, couldn't ever carry a child. Blake's dismissive and cold expression on camera sparked outrage. Parker Posey, sitting next to Blake, actually laughed along, creating an environment that felt more like a high school cafeteria scene than a professional press interview. This was one of those rare moments of cruelty that was actually caught on camera, not just described secondhand. It left fans uneasy, wondering how many more incidents never saw the light of day. Right as that interview went viral, another controversy suddenly popped up. Claims that Justin Baldoni had fat-shamed Blake on set. The timing was suspicious. Almost. like a targeted effort to paint Baldoni as the villain at the exact moment the public was souring on Blake for the Kirsty interview. Insiders, however, explained that Baldoni had a back injury at the time and needed to discuss weight distribution for safety reasons during stunt work, which is standard procedure. There was no personal attack or vicious comment. So was this fat-shaming angle a genuine concern or a calculated distraction to deflect from Blake's harsh behavior toward Kirsty? Many people began suspecting it was the latter. Is it a coincidence the fat-shaming story hit headlines right when Blake's old footage resurfaced? Or is it a PR strategy to shift blame? What do you think? Drop a comment. Then there's the role that Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift supposedly played in Blake's life. According to leaked messages, she referred to them as her dragons, the people she could rely on to swoop in and defend her whenever things got messy. Ryan showed his loyalty by unfollowing Baldoni on Instagram, a move that spoke volumes without a single word being said. But Taylor Swift's reaction was different. Despite a close friendship with Blake, Taylor stayed quiet. She didn't publicly condemn Baldoni, and she certainly didn't jump in to shield Blake from the intensifying backlash. For someone as massively influential as Taylor, a non-action can be as loud as any statement. Fans started questioning whether Taylor felt used by Blake, especially if she'd been drawn into feuds that had nothing to do with her. Could this friendship have been more of a strategic alliance on Blake's end? When it comes to It Ends With Us, author Colleen Hoover's response made an even bigger impression on fans. Initially, she seemed on board with Blake starring in and promoting the adaptation. But after the controversies exploded, Hoover wiped all traces of Blake from her social media. No supportive posts, no behind-the-scenes photos, nothing. It was as if Blake was never involved. Authors don't typically do that with the stars of their adaptations unless there's a serious falling out or a major concern about the film's final product. Hoover's silent erasure spoke volumes to fans who track every detail. If you were in Colleen Hoover's shoes, would you try to save the partnership for the sake of the book's popularity or cut ties to protect your reputation? I'd love to hear your take on this. Justin Baldoni decided he wasn't going to let the media spin these stories unchecked. He filed a defamation lawsuit against the New York Times, alleging that some of its articles had taken Blake's side without verifying key pieces of evidence. His legal team reportedly has text messages that might prove some of Blake's claims were fabricated or taken out of context. If he can show that, it doesn't just hurt Blake's credibility, it suggests a broader, orchestrated campaign to destroy his reputation and push him out of the narrative surrounding It Ends With Us. On top of all that, the Gossip Girl cast's reaction has been eerily silent. People like Leighton Meester and Penn Badgley haven't jumped to defend Blake's character, despite having worked with her for 6 years. In Hollywood, co-stars often come forward with at least a generic statement when a colleague is under fire. "I never witnessed anything like that," or "she was always professional with me." But here, there's nothing. That absence feels deliberate, a loud void that says more than any short public statement could. If you step back and look at the bigger picture, it seems like we're witnessing the dismantling of an image that was years in the making. On one side, you have an actress who sold us on the idea of a down-to-earth, stylish, fun-loving woman who married one of the most likable men in Hollywood. On the other, you have allegations of underhanded power moves, manipulative friend circles, and a potential smear campaign so intense it crossed into defamation territory. Do you think the allegations are blown out of proportion, or are we finally seeing Blake's true colors? What's next for Blake Lively's career? Typically, when a star is backed into a corner with mounting evidence against them, they might attempt a carefully orchestrated apology tour. Maybe we'll see a heartfelt interview, tears, and regrets, promises to do better. She might claim she was young and ambitious, that she's changed over time, but with the sheer volume of evidence, like that 2016 interview footage, the rumored text messages, and the direct lawsuits from Baldoni, people wonder if it's already too late. The public can be forgiving, but only to a certain point. And the Hollywood machine, it can freeze you out the moment your name carries more negative weight than positive. One thing that stands out is that Ryan Reynolds, while loyal enough to unfollow Baldoni, hasn't launched a public defense for his wife either. He's known for his quick wit and protective nature when it comes to family. If Blake's being wronged, wouldn't we expect some kind of statement from him clarifying the rumors? Instead, he's maintained a notable silence aside from that Instagram gesture. Could that silence be strategic? Possibly. Or maybe it indicates even he's not entirely sure how to navigate this storm without making things worse. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift's decision to pull back might be the final sign that Blake's strongest allies are also protecting themselves. Swift has endured her own share of public battles and definitely knows the power of controlling a narrative. Her staying quiet says she doesn't want to be dragged in, especially if there's a chance these allegations are true. If anything, Swift's fans are among the most vigilant on the internet. They pick up on every subtle PR move, and many of them already suspect that this friendship was far more beneficial to Blake than to Taylor. Then there's the question of whether the entire It Ends With Us fiasco will tarnish the film's reception. Colleen Hoover's fans are passionate about the novel, and many were excited to see a faithful adaptation. The drama surrounding Blake, Baldoni, and the allegedly compromised production process could sour audience enthusiasm. Early reports even suggest that Baldoni's original cuts tested better with audiences than Blake's version, but Blake allegedly insisted that hers be the final cut. That's the kind of behind-the-scenes meddling fans of the book won't appreciate if they feel she disrupted the story they love. Now we have a standoff, a star who seems to be losing public support by the day, a director who refuses to let his name be tarnished, and an author who quietly removed any trace of her association with that star.
Cast. Now you tell me, if you're an unknown actor in this film and you know that Blake and Ryan have turned on the no-name Justin Baldoni, who are you going to follow? You know, these are weak, feckless people out in Hollywood. They have no spine. So of course they all unfollowed him and chose Team Blake, including, by the way, Colleen Hoover, the one who really owed him a debt of gratitude because he bought the rights to her book. She went Team Blake. Well, guess what she just did this week? She scrubbed all of her social media of Blake Lively. She'd already stepped away from Justin. Now she's scrubbed all of her social media from Blake Lively because I think she's starting to realize she made a mistake.
Add to that the Megyn Kelly factor, someone whose platform and willingness to speak bluntly has ensured that this story won't just vanish like some minor tabloid rumor. Every day, more details trickle out, and more people form opinions on who the real Blake Lively is. The real question might be whether she'll have enough industry friends left once the dust settles to keep her afloat. At this point, it feels like a crossroads. If the defamation suit unearths proof that Blake orchestrated a smear campaign and lied about Baldoni, her credibility in Hollywood could plunge overnight. Studios and producers might see her as a risky bet, somebody who could not only take control of their project, but also turn around and publicly vilify them if things go south. Even if she's found blameless in court, the swirl of controversy and lack of vocal support from longtime colleagues isn't a great look. In the end, this is a story about how a meticulously crafted public persona can collapse the moment people start pulling back the curtains. For nearly a decade, Blake Lively was the picture of glowing perfection. Flawless on magazine covers, witty on social media, and seemingly unflappable at Hollywood galas. Yet the more we hear from Megyn Kelly, from Justin Baldoni's team, and from those old 2016 tapes, the more we realize that beneath the polished exterior might lurk a ruthless desire to control every situation. Maybe that's standard in Hollywood, but people usually hide it better, or at least don't brag about it in public speeches. Watching it all unravel feels like a reality show no one asked for, but we can't look away. Each day brings fresh revelations or new silence from those who once seemed like her closest allies. Gossip sites can't get enough. Mainstream media outlets are picking sides, and fans across social platforms are debating whether they should have ever looked up to Blake in the first place. If she was always this way, how did she maintain the sweetheart image for so long? Which moment in this whole saga do you find the most shocking? The basement incident, the baby bump insult, the allegations of hijacking the movie? Drop a comment and let me know which one left you speechless. All we know is that the ripple effects will linger. Maybe Blake will stage an apology campaign, or maybe she'll try to tough it out, hoping her loyal fanbase and a new project will help the public forget. But the industry's memory can be long when major controversies are involved. If the defamation lawsuits reveal damaging truths, no carefully worded statement may be enough to restore her old image. In the meantime, we'll all be watching to see who else decides to speak up or remain silent. When it comes down to it, the question is less about whether Blake Lively really is the master manipulator Megyn Kelly suggests, and more about how fans, fellow actors, and production companies will react to the possibility she is. This might be the tipping point that changes how A-list stars are allowed to influence film sets, or it might blow over if enough other stories eclipse it. But right now, it feels like the final act of a drama that Blake never expected would come to light. All we can do is wait and see if her empire manages to survive, or if Megyn Kelly's brutal spotlight will be what ends it once and for all. For more of the latest news, watch the next video.